Firewatch is a very pretty, story-driven walkie-talkie simulator. The game follows Henry, a 40-something-year-old man who has an upsetting backstory and takes a job as a firewatch in a national park to escape his problems. He and his supervisor, Delilah, speak over the radios as Henry does his job, and as the game goes on, unravels a whole bunch of mysterious occurrences. As the player, you get to follow Henry in his journey to explore his assigned wilderness, a mystery that may or may not be the figment of Henry's imagination, and maybe, just maybe, actually think about the problems he's running away from.
Now, I'm someone who has grown up playing and watching video games, but my repertoire of games is more or less limited to Animal Crossing, The Sims, and Harvest Moon. My boyfriend Lachy, however, is a seasoned gamer and has probably played every game that exists, and he's always on my back about branching out a bit more with what I play. So here we are. Lachy and I play a weird new game that I've never played before, and between the two of us, we will tell you what we thought of it. No doubt about it, this game was pretty. Even with my very non-gaming laptop and the lowest graphics settings possible, it looked stunning. The majority of the good visuals was thanks to the specific art style, which struck the perfect balance between realistic enough to pull you in and stylized enough to not attempt to be fully realistic. Blocky boulders and almost 2D but not quite tufts of grass were made absolutely beautiful with really great lighting and the soft movement of bushes and trees in the wind. This game truly felt like it does to go for a hike in a beautiful place.
I think what really makes this game look so beautiful is the colours. Incredibly bright and saturated oranges, reds and yellows at sunsets, the overall blue tinge and drifting low fog in the early mornings, and the haze of the smokier days all brought variety to each day spent in the national park.
There is not a lot of music in this game. However, in the moments that do have some music, which is quite beautiful in itself, it is very impactful. Ominous music puts you right onto the edge of your seat, and pop music blasting from a boombox on a beach does a great job of accurately introducing a couple of drunk teenagers.
Yeah.
I know this will be tough for you, but try.
Of course, when it's not a pivotal moment and music is playing, the world still makes noise, and a lot of it. The wind rustles the leaves of the trees, the creeks and lakes run and splash under Henry's boots. Unseen birds chirp in the distance, a twig snaps behind you. Strong winds whip down a rocky canyon. It accompanies the incredible visuals of the game perfectly.
I just heard something.
The start of the game takes you through a text-only prologue of sorts, which is very effective at making you feel empathy for Henry. And it's a perfect way to set up the story and give you information you need without feeling like a boring info dump. Knowing this information means that dialogue options feel much more natural when the game gets going, and helps the player feel more like they are playing Henry instead of trying to learn more about him. The dialogue between Henry and Delilah was fantastically written and spoken, incredibly compelling and authentic. It felt completely natural to hike and climb as Henry while speaking to Delilah.
So, I have a bit of a confession to make.
What is it?
Look, I was drunk last night when I welcomed you to the job.
Yeah, well, you're not the first boss to be guilty of that.
I know I can get a little pushy, putting you on the spot about why you're out here and stuff.
I'd like to think I'm decent at predicting twists in movies and books, but I definitely didn't predict the story that unfolds in this game. In its essence, Firewatch is a game exploring people, their problems, and trying to escape them, and I think the story and the mystery portrays that really well. While I don't think it all wrapped up perfectly with a nice little bow, which is a common criticism of the game, I think it was a perfect way to write the story to reflect the characters and themes. This game is obviously not about the game mechanics, but it is important for the game to feel smooth in order to not detract from the world and the story. Generally, the movements and actions were smooth and seamless, but occasionally I found myself getting stuck or not finding quite the right spot to point my cursor to be able to climb down a rope. Definitely not game-breaking, but there nonetheless.
Amy and I both played this game on PC, and found the controls felt a little awkward and occasionally immersion breaking, as you had to look away from your screen and move your hand across the keyboard to open up the map with him, and I ended up changing the keybinds. That said, it'd probably work well for people newer to games to have the action set to the most obvious keys.
Even on my laptop with a very basic graphics card, the game ran totally fine. I think I noticed a couple of moments where the frame rate dropped slightly, but otherwise it felt perfectly smooth.
For me, the game ran perfectly fine as well, although I am running this on a 1080 Ti graphics card with an older i7 CPU. I was able to run it on the highest quality settings at 60 FPS 1440p, with the only issue being a little bit of a visual glitch at one point in the game, and some pop-in once or twice, but really wasn't game-breaking.
Lachy and I agreed on basically everything in this game. The one thing I noticed that he didn't was music playing at random times, which wasn't quite highlighting an important moment, leaving me just a little confused. But overall, I really enjoyed this game. I was immersed in the beautiful scenery and compelling dialogue, and I feel like I've thoroughly experienced and enjoyed a whole new type of game for me.
For me, this game was more about the story and the visuals, which isn't normally what I go for. However, I got really invested in the interactions between Henry and Delilah, and felt like that was the real crux of the game, accompanied by a beautiful world. There was a point at which I pissed off Delilah and she stepped away from conversation for a moment, which really made me notice how important these interactions were to the gameplay. Overall, I think Firewatch had a really interesting story, and is a game worth experiencing.